some of my thoughts are going to be very rough on this idea because I thought about it today and I was thinking about it more and more. And it's what's kind of interesting when we talk about the subject-object dichotomy. There is a way in which we assume what we know, what we're talking about when we say subject, right? When we say this subject, that subject, I am a subject. And so we have some concept of what subject is, right? Even when we're talking about subjectivity, right? My experiences, we're trying to achieve some type of concrete understanding of the subject's experience, and so on. But I really want to take seriously for a moment what would it mean to be God's image, like image. So what I'm really trying to propose here and what I'm trying to play with, and I'm going to do a lot of twisting and turning in this talk, so kind of just be prepared. It's going to be a little bit of a wild ride, but so let's do this proposal. Let's say this. I think the assumption is that we have taken subject as concrete, right? But what I really want to introduce is not subject as, like, before we go into subject as person, subject as individual, subject as a being, what I want to propose is let's entertain this. Let's borrow the concept of the image of God, right? Made in the image of God, okay? But the thing is, I really want to take seriously the idea of image, imago. I really want to take this idea. Because I think there's some really fascinating points that we can make, especially with our advancements in psychology and sort of our verbiage too, such as projection. I think that's going to be a very fascinating word soon. Something that I think Freud came up with, right? If I remember correctly, projecting. Okay. So let's think about this for a moment. Let's say that the image is subject and the subject is an image. Okay? Now, there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to have to really, really break down here. What is an image? What is an image? So my method for thinking this through is going to be premised on an etymology. It's going to be premised on etymology, right? What is the etymology of image? Now I'm going to throw a couple words around, and you guys are going to see what we mean by this, right? So in Old French, image can mean likeness, figure, drawing, portrait, reflection. In Latin, it can the imago can mean copy, imitation, statue, picture. Also phantom, ghost, apparition. And figuratively, it can mean idea, appearance, or from the stem of imitari, to copy, imitate. Okay. And what's interesting is actually the pi root of it, right? It's to copy. Okay. So let's take imitate and copy some of the the etymology of this word image, right? What do we do as subjects, right? What do we do as subjects? As subjects, we imitate, right? That's how we develop. We copy. That's how we sort of learn things as well. We, I'm going to play on two types of reflection here, right? Our eyes reflect light, but not only that, we're also capable of observing the observer, right? We're capable of reflection, actual reflection, right? Observing the observer. So, subject as image really has something to carry here, right? And it would make sense too, right? Because think about this, right? An idea comes in. And what does an idea do to a subject? An idea shapes the subject. Same thing as the subject shaping the idea. I think it would be sort of wrong to think, oh, idea, subject, they're separate. No. Remember, in the etymology of image, idea is also in there. Idea. Right? Phantom, ghost, apparition. Okay. Now let's look into psychoanalysis. What does psychoanalysis say? Okay. We pay attention to Zizek, right? Everything's fantasy. Right? How does that happen? How does fantasy come into the picture? Well, I think there's a lot of substance to this idea of image. One, if we think about multiplicity seriously, image would make a lot of sense. We can copy ourselves, right? Through reproduction. We imitate in order to learn and develop, to sort of sort of mold ourselves into a society. We have to imitate. We have to sort of follow and copy. We have ideas. And we can reflect. Why is ideology such a problem? Is because, well, it shapes us. So, if an ideology shapes us, if ideas shape us, and then ideas that we thrust out in the world shapes other people, either contrary to the idea or accepting of the idea, there's really something to be said about the subject as image. As image. And just to go, and why can we relate to each other, right? Why is that possible? Why is it possible for me to experience have an experience of the other? How is that possible? See, I think if we think subject as image, if an image can project itself, then that means an image has a capability of projecting itself on the other, right? But just as much as it's capable of projecting itself on the other, it's able to do maybe, I don't think there's a word for this, really. It's able to project itself, but in a way that it's non-interfering to where you can actually experience the other, right? You can experience the other. And, when we study Carl Jung, for example, right? The shadow, the idea of the shadow, right? This is, of course, going to be a very basic conception of the shadow. The shadow is obviously the unconscious. But if we take a look at the shadow, right? The shadow, when we have strong reactions to people, plays as a sort of reflection of our own selves, of our own unconscious. So this reflection, copy, imitation, ideas. Oh, and the other word I didn't say, appearance, right? Everything that is sensible, right, that sort of arises is appearances. But the very interesting thing about this, right, we could say all these physical things are appearances. We could say that. Or maybe we can take like a Buddhist notion, right? Everything's illusion. But here's the thing, right? Here's something that we don't ask. And what is it that we don't ask when we accept a paradigm of everything's illusion? Everything is just appearances. Well, then what is the subject then? Is the subject non-appearance? Is the subject non-illusion then? See, we have a tendency to think we're the only concrete thing when we sort of try to carry skepticism to its furthest, level. But actually, what it would be saying is that we can never escape reality. Meaning, if I define the world as illusion, that means myself is an illusion. If I describe the world as appearances, then myself is also an appearance. Right? This would take seriously what it means to be subject as image. Right? Subject as image. And if and I really want to take this seriously because, just pay attention to this, right? Imagination, we often think in images, right? Imagination. Our memories, we often have vivid memories, images. We do visual art. We do cinema. We're so dang good at images. And yet, ironically, images, whether they're statues, whether they're artwork, any types of artwork, whether they're ideas, they reflect what we do and what we are. And how would that be possible? Right? How can the art reflect the artist? Tell me that. The only thing that I can think of is because actually the artist is himself an image. Right? So that means when you look at a piece of art, you're not just staring at the art, you're also staring at the artist. When you read a book, you're not just reading the book, you're also reading the person as imago, as image. There is a double reflection, you could say, right? There's actually I'm borrowing some of my ideas from, a very famous line that Ibn Arabi says, and also Master Eckhart says, meaning that there's the line is this, right? The eye that I see God is the same eye that God sees me, right? So that's why I'm trying to really nail down this idea, because most of the time we have kind of just accepted, like, oh yes, we're made in God's image. Well, in the Christian sense, we've resorted to this physicality, right? Because Jesus came down, he reincarnated, got incarnated, not reincarnated, but got incarnated. I'm thinking Buddhism. Sorry, I'm taking Buddhist classes right now. So Jesus got incarnated, right? So we think in this physical sense. But I think, and this is not to sort of deter or downplay Jesus' incarnation or whatever the sense, but what I'm trying to say is, if we take seriously the notion of image as subject, to me it begins to make a lot of sense, right? Why as human beings can we copy? Why as human beings can we imitate? Why as human beings we can project ourselves? We can project our ideas. We can create ideas that mold other people. Basically, we're like images creating other images. Multiplicity upon multiplicity. But that image shapes another image. It's a reaction upon reaction. It's a causality of images, right? But if you want to think about the fluidity of images, I just think about like a ripple, a ripple in the lake. It just keeps going, right? Ideas, artwork, images. It shapes us. And we shape them. Reflections. It's reflections. I move, it moves. I take a step, there's another step. Why can I never take a step in the same river twice? It's because there's that reflection already. We have shadows. We have shadows. We have shadows, for crying out loud. But, again, I think it's, and I'm really, really stripping away here the sort of materialistic mindset here. Because if you strip away the materialistic mindset, right? If you really ask, like, where's this I in the body exactly? Like, tell me, where is it? Right? When you say I has to be an image. It has to be an image. There's no way it's not, to some degree, right? If you actually think about real experiences, right? When you're in a dialogue with somebody, typically there's only one person that's I, right? But what's interesting is that actually when it's I and you, there's always this switch, right? There's me as I speaking, and then there's you as I listening. But notice how that you and I, that you hyphen I is always there. It's always there. Right? When I say you also perceive you understand it's you. But when you look at me, I understand myself as I. But you call me you. And you understand yourself as I. So it's like it's double reflection. I, you I. And it's funny because, again, when we really take seriously image, there's a way in which, even in modern, our sort of current times, right? We like to say vibes, and we have these sort of senses going on, right? But again, I don't think we've spent enough time really considering or even playing with the subject as image, because what's behind the image? Well, it depends. Zizek would say it's void. And so image and void, fantasy. Pure fantasy. Together, it's fantasy. The subject is empty because it's image behind. Right? Why is the void going to fail the image? Because the void doesn't allow a reflection. So therefore the image must project itself and create a fantasy. But subject as image in meeting God, now the image can encounter a true subject, which would allow to see itself as subject. But subject image, subject hyphen image. Now it sees itself in its fullest because it's now subject image. All right, so that's all I wanted to say, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm cutting off this really quickly because, I record this on my phone and there's only so much space so that I can send on the email, so on and so on. And I hate cutting the audio. It's really pain. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed those thoughts. Take care.